A moment later, Sophie and Jacob stepped on two good quality swords and left the small valley. Fatigued after its flight from first heaven to fifth heaven, Snowflake rested in Jacob's necklace. Before she lost her dragon core, Sophie had once reached third level. With her experience, she quickly mastered the basic flight spell after some practice, and thus had no problem flying on the sword. Before, Dracon was afraid that Sophie would get into some trouble and didn't teach her how to fly on a sword. Now, in fifth heaven, she was no longer restricted by that rule, and her cultivation strength of the Chi refinement realm was enough for her to control the sword with ease. She was delighted that she could finally fly by herself. She summoned all her nature essence and flew fast while Jacob flew alongside her at a measured speed. According to the human cultivation system, Jacob was now a core formation realm cultivator, while Sophie was only a Chi refinement realm cultivator. With the big difference in the realms between them, Jacob could catch up with Sophie easily. They flew on the swords at a speed only a bit faster than biking. However, the sensation of flying and controlling the direction and speed of the sword was far cooler than riding a bicycle. In the picturesque scenery, Sophie laughed delightfully while riding on the sword. Flying steadily by her side, Jacob smiled as he heard her laughter. After all, despite being the princess of the North Atlantic Dragon Clan, Sophie was sometimes still like a little girl, looking to have some fun. The two swords moved forward slowly between the high mountains, while a light breeze touched their faces. Wasn't this the life of celestial couples?
Jacob, look!
Excited, Sophie grabbed his arm and pointed ahead to the right. Among the mountains, several palaces and buildings stood on the mountaintops with paths of stone steps leading up to them. Obviously, it was a big cultivation sect on fifth heaven. The moment they saw the buildings and towers, they had trespassed on the territory of the sect. Jacob didn't know array formations and was oblivious to the fact that the moment they entered the territory, the defensive array formation alarmed the cultivators in the sect. Sophie had just finished her exclamation when about 60 cultivators with swords surrounded Jacob and her. The cultivators were each standing on a sword while holding another sword for attacking. Sophie was deflated when she realized that they were surrounded. She had hoped to sneak into the sect's scroll tower or elixir palace, not to steal treasures, but to experience the excitement of an adventure. However, before they could get close, they were surrounded. The leaders of the group were two core formation realm cultivators. This sect was not a leading sect on fifth heaven, but it was passable with 7 core formation realm cultivators as elders. Right now, 2 of those elders and many Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were more than enough to deal with a Core Formation Realm cultivator and a weak Chi Refinement Realm cultivator. Judging from the weird clothes Jacob and Sophie had, they guessed that these 2 intruders might have many treasures with them. Just the 2 swords they were flying on looked to be of good quality. Anyway, the intruders would be killed for their trespassing, and their treasures would be their loot. The 2 Core Formation Realm cultivators were pleased with this prospect.
We are elders from the White Sand sect. These are our identifications.
Looking at the glances on these cultivators' faces, Sophie knew that they had evil schemes on their minds. She took out the wooden badge of Elder Remy and tossed it at them. She lied without blushing. White Sand sect. A cultivator caught the wooden badge and looked at it before glancing at Sophie in suspicion. He handed it to a cultivator beside him. That cultivator studied the wooden badge and nodded. It's indeed the identity badge of the White Sand sect. Sophie pursed her lips.
Then what are you waiting for? Let us go.
Although she didn't know anything about the White Sand sect, she guessed that the sect wasn't a tiny one, since they were brave enough to send scouts to First Heaven. She was quite smart. The cultivator curled his lips and smiled. Putting the wooden badge into his pocket, he drew out his longsword from his back and said, "However, little girl, we are the White Sand Sect." Sophie froze. The other cultivators all drew their swords as well. Including the swords under their feet, almost 100 swords flashed in front of Sophie and Jacob. Before Jacob could explain, over 20 cultivators pounced on him. The swords pierced forward, and each of them stabbed toward his vital organs. They were trying to kill him. Faced with a group attack, even a core formation realm cultivator didn't have the time to fight back. However, Jacob was not a typical core formation realm cultivator. Like fireworks, Jacob emitted 80 five-colored sword energies, which formed a circle with a diameter of 0.5 meter around him. The first 5 longswords that were stabbing at him were all chopped into 2 halves. With Jacob's personality, even if he knew that the 2 captives this morning were human cultivators from Fifth Heaven, he would have let them go. However, he had just entered the White Sand Sect's territory unwittingly, and thus became the target of slaughter. However, he wouldn't stand there and let them kill Sophie and him. "He's a core formation realm cultivator. We must be careful. Build the array formation." The leading cultivator lifted his huge sword and yelled, "Kill him, and we can share the stuff in his storage bag." As a mid-tier core formation realm cultivator, he was sure that he could defeat Jacob. However, why would he do that when he had so many disciples with him? The disciples who were in the Foundation Establishment realm were motivated. After all, the storage bag of a core formation realm cultivator would contain many treasures. By receiving one of them, a low-level disciple could use it to level up. Elixirs, treasures, and cultivation techniques. Regardless of Jacob's sharp sword energies, the remaining cultivators swarmed up. "Don't kill the female cultivator. We can use her as a cauldron," the other core formation realm cultivator said. In human cultivation, some male cultivators couldn't make any more breakthroughs after they had reached certain stages. Instead, they would have intercourse with female cultivators and take the yin energy from the female bodies. Those female cultivators were called cauldrons. It was a common practice in 5th and 6th Heaven. A lot of female cultivators became objects to the male cultivators, and some of them were even killed by male cultivators, for the latter to increase their realm more. Therefore, these words breached Jacob's bottom line. He shot out a white sword energy from his fingertip and pierced the mouth of the cultivator who uttered the outrageous order. Instantly, the 80 sword energies condensed into a huge gray sword, smashing away the dozens of Foundation Establishment realm disciples. Their swords dropped on the ground, and these weak cultivators fell and cried in pain. Sophie didn't hear what that cultivator yelled, and thus didn't understand Jacob's sudden anger. The huge gray sword energy shattered and transformed into slim sword energies before flying around Jacob like bees and butterflies. At this moment, Jacob stood on the sword, and no one dared to get close to him. His sword energies surrounded Sophie, and the sword energies would pierce anyone who dared to get close to her from all directions. "You dared to fight back?" The mid-tier core formation realm cultivator didn't expect Jacob to be so fierce. However, he observed carefully and was sure that Jacob was indeed a low-tier core formation realm cultivator. He took out an iron fan and swung it at Jacob. From his perspective, Jacob's fierceness came from his powerful treasure. Once he killed Jacob, he would get that treasure. He unleashed his full force. The iron fan shot out 3 black light beams, which instantly broke the sword energies around Jacob. A large number of Foundation Establishment Realm disciples swarmed out, and the rest of the Core Formation Realm elders, who were guarding the Great Hall, also rushed out at the news. Jacob's appearance drew out all the people in the sect. "Kill him!" more than 200 cultivators flew toward Jacob with overwhelming murderous spirits, and all kinds of treasures were thrown at him. Sophie didn't expect that they would cause such an upheaval. She was about to pull Jacob away and escape when the 3 black light beams suddenly changed course and pulled her from Jacob's side. The black beams were pulling her toward the direction of the Core Formation Realm cultivator, who was eager to catch her and search her for treasures. According to their traditions, anyone who caught the enemies would get their storage bags. Seeing the celestial-looking and sword-riding cultivators behaving like thugs, Jacob was enraged. He would never allow them to touch Sophie. A gray sword energy slashed forward with crackling noises, and the 3 black light beams were instantly broken. His lightning sword energy was capable of breaking all 5 elements. Sophie lost her balance on the sword and fell onto the mountain. Fortunately, she fell onto the soft grass and didn't bump into the rocks. "You're surrounded! Surrender!" The newly arrived Core Formation Realm cultivators threw a ton of treasures at Jacob. With all his attention focused on rescuing Sophie, Jacob opened himself up to the attacks, which all struck his body. However, his body had been tempered by heavenly lightning, and he withstood the strikes of the treasures without instantly falling dead. Of course, another reason was that the treasures these cultivators used were not advanced. Seeing that Jacob was still alive after being struck by so many treasures, the handful of Core Formation Realm cultivators and the many Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were all convinced that Jacob had great treasures on him, and they wanted to kill him to get the treasures even more. The second wave of treasures was thrown at Jacob. This time, even the Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators joined their elders, and all kinds of treasures shot toward Jacob alongside hundreds of swords. All the acupoints in Jacob's body opened at once. The sword energies hidden in them shot out like raindrops. Tens of thousands of swords.